These recipes are showing how you can spend 15 minutes of prep time and still be budget conscious and still have a delicious, nourishing meal.
For anyone out there who's been curious but reluctant to try a plant-based diet because you've heard that it's time-consuming or expensive, our guest today is going to shatter those myths. In her new book, Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, 100 fast, healthy meal prep, freezer-friendly, and one-pot vegan recipes, Chef Toni Okamoto demystifies plant-based eating. She offers practical solutions to make delicious, healthy, and diverse foods convenient and, of course, more affordable. Toni is the host of Plant Powered People podcast and the founder of Plant-Based on a Budget website. She appeared in the documentary What the Health, and for those of you who've been listeners for a while, you might recognize Toni from when she was our guest in episode 105. So if you want to know more about her personal vegan journey, definitely go back and listen to that show, because today we are diving right away into her new book. We're very happy to have her here again today to ignite our culinary imagination. So welcome, Toni Okamoto, to Switch4Good.
Thank you so much for having me. I was talking about this before we hit record, but you two are some of my favorites, and I am so honored to be here again.
Oh, well, that's a real compliment, because we know that you get on a lot of podcasts and a lot of PR for your books because they do very well. This one hit number 18 of 32 million books on Amazon. Congratulations. That's amazing. And number 33 on the Barnes and Noble websites and sales. That's amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's telling. People want plant-based recipes in their lives. So I'm grateful to be part of this movement with you all.
So give us some insight into how this new book, Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, is different from your last book, which is called Plant-Based on a Budget. I'm imagining it's because things are quicker and easier, but and they're still affordable. But give us some ideas of how this book is different.
You've got it right. And it's different because I'm in a different place in my life and I'm eating differently. When I wrote Plant-Based on a Budget, I was on a shoestring budget. I poured my life savings into that book, and it was really bootstrapped. And I focused mostly on how to save the most money. And that requires sometimes time. Like if you're cooking your beans from scratch on the stovetop, that's going to take a couple hours. If you're baking your own bread, if you're doing your own pizza dough, those all can be time consuming. And at that time, that's what I had more of. I had more time than money. And now in my life, I have a dog who I love and spend a lot of time with. I'm married now. I run a business, and I have little time, and I have a little bit more disposable income to do things like use canned beans, even though they're more expensive than cooking them from scratch. And so these recipes are showing how you can spend 15 minutes of prep time and still be budget conscious and still have a delicious, nourishing meal.
Wow, that sounds like a book Dotsie and I both would love to.
I think we shared last time. I mean, neither one of us are, gurus in the kitchen whatsoever. I mean, we'd like everything to be pretty easy. I know for myself and my husband, we have like 6, maybe 7 meals, period, that we just rotate and make. And, it's just not very culinary inspired. And I'm always telling, the wonderful chef, Jason Robel, he's a dear friend of mine, and he will literally, when he's making recipes for Switch4Good, he'll make the Jason version, and then I have him make the Dotsie version, because I'm always telling him 6 ingredients. I don't care what it is. Like I start getting glossy eyed after 6 or 7 ingredients. It's just like, oh, I can't put that together. So we have that on the site. It's like his version, the version for people that are special. So this sounds, exactly like what you are presenting here. And you told us some of the hacks, right? I mean, I've never cooked a bean from scratch in my life. So the canned beans, but let's go right into like your top 3 to 5 quick and easies for dinner, I'll say, because we want to do some other stuff with breakfast. But
Dotsie cooking is Toni cooking also. I tried to make the recipes in the book 7 ingredients or less and about 3 to 4 bullet points of instructions. So even people who are not big fans of being in the kitchen can quickly go in there and easily read it through, not see the wall of text. So I feel you. That is my style of cooking, and I gravitate toward those recipes myself. For my favorite dinner recipes, I tend to go toward one pot meals. I hate doing dishes. I don't want to do them, get them out of here. And so if I can dirty up the least amount, that's what I'm going to do. I do one pots with things like my favorite, it's one of my favorites in the book. It's called sopa de fideo. It is sort of like a pasta dish that is a Mexican take. It's something that I grew up eating. My grandma used to make it for me all the time. And it's basically angel hair pasta that's broken up in a tomato-based soup with vegetables. And I also throw in a can of black beans for some protein, and it's a hearty meal. It's so easy. That pasta in the Hispanic section of the grocery store is about 33 cents for 8 ounces. So it's very economical. The whole thing comes together in less than $5. So that's one of them. I also like to do a black bean chili. I like to do a ramen stir fry. And I would say my last 2 would be the lentil curried soup, and I'm going to throw in a casserole and say the sheet pan nachos.
The sheet pan nachos? Ah, okay. I wanted to ask you about that. In terms of cheese, how do you help people who miss cheese or cheesy flavor? What ingredients make up for that in a vegan meal?
I have done a few things. One of my favorite recipes, it's on Plant-Based on a Budget, but it's also in the first Plant-Based on a Budget cookbook, is a nacho cheese made from potatoes and carrots and nutritional yeast. It is oil-free and delicious. You also can give it a kick with some jalapeno or store-bought salsa. And it is very easy to make, tastes remarkably like cheese, and goes great on those nachos. Also, when I became vegan, there was no vegan cheese that was edible. And I've been vegan for 16 years now. I remember when Daya first came onto the scene, and I had to take turns with my friends to drive to San Francisco, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from me. And you could only buy 5-pound bags from one grocery store. And we would divvy it up, put our money in, freeze it. And now gone are those days. Going to the grocery store is like vegan cheese haven, and you have so many options. At my local grocery store, I shop at a discount grocery store often called Grocery Outlet. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but you can find vegan cheese there for $2, $3 for a bag, and it's price comparable to dairy cheese.
have you ever tried house party cheese that used to be Loca cheese?
I haven't.
It's made from potatoes. We had the
Oh,
founder
nice.
on not too long. It's delicious. It's so delicious, but it's vegetables and potatoes and some spices. I've always wondered, this is what I feel like I'm missing in the culinary, many things, but you know how you just said, okay, you make your own. It's potatoes and vegetables and spice. When you're trying to recreate a creamy cheese and nacho cheese, what is someone who does have culinary talent and that spirit and that awareness and like, do you go, okay, I need it to taste like this. I need the consistency to be like this. And I need it to be, and then you start to put it together and try things. Cause like, I would never in a million years been like, let me grab some potatoes and make some cheese with, it just wouldn't even occur.
Yes, it's a lot of trial and error in the kitchen. I do extensive recipe testing when it comes to my books, and I do that for several reasons. One, the majority of people who follow Plant-Based on a Budget are meat eaters who are looking to incorporate more plant-based dishes into their lives. And so they're not necessarily trying to be vegan ever, maybe, but they're open to meatless Mondays. They're open to vegan dinners. And I think that that is so cool. And I want those people who are still eating maybe McDonald's for lunch to enjoy eating whatever I'm making. And it's a tough crowd. I'm not going to lie, it's a tough crowd. And so I want to make things extra, extra good. And also, it's an investment. Buying a cookbook is using your hard-earned money. And I want to make sure that not only are they getting a good deal on my book, but when they're buying the groceries, they're not going to have to toss the meal because it's inedible. So I work with 100 recipe testers on my books and make sure they're incredibly diverse. I make sure that they live in rural areas and urban areas and places where food is a lot harder to access. I make sure that they have different cooking skills. And literally, there's a kid who helped me, and everybody has to give their stamp of approval. And once it makes it out of my kitchen, 5 other people test it, and then it comes back to me with their feedback. So that's how the trial and error happens. It starts in my kitchen, but then it goes through the extensive process.
Wow. Yeah. I'm curious about the process of developing a cookbook, because I hear it sounds like, oh, it's so fun. You get to taste all this different food and everything. But we've had some cookbook authors on saying it is hard and it can be long. What's the most fun and the least fun for you about writing a cookbook?
Easy peasy. The least fun is the editing process. So it takes about 2 years to write a book from the beginning to the end. And somewhere in the middle is the editing process. And you turn in your manuscript thinking, I've poured my heart and soul into this. I did my recipe testing. It's a masterpiece. And then you get it back and it has 10,000 edits about how it can be better. My first manuscript was so packed with edits that it wouldn't even open on my computer. I had to use my husband's computer because he had a nicer, newer computer, so that it would open, because it was just so jam-packed and redlined. So that's my least favorite. I can only do it in 15-minute increments. I can read them and then say, okay, I need to press too much. And then my most favorite is the marketing part, getting to chat with different amazing people, and also hearing from people who are from a different community and maybe new to plant-based and new to my work. So because I'm also in the finance world, I did a lot of money podcasts, and now I've got a new set of people interested in plant-based eating who are mostly coming because they're budget conscious. And that is so cool to me.
Oh, that's great. Now you mentioned, the one pot, and I know that we talked in episode 105 a little bit about gadgets, kitchen gadgets, because Dotsie loves her air fryer. And can you tell us and our audience about gadgets, kitchen gadgets, and what's come on the market more recently? What do you really like, in a budget or out of a budget? Because this book is a little looser, but if it's quick and easy, a lot of people might jump on it.
Yes, I stick to what I said in the book, which is you can do it with anything that you have. When I started cooking, I had a bare bones kitchen. I had hand-me-down knives, and I used peanut butter jars for my Tupperware. And you can be plant-based and have nothing in your kitchen. So there's that. But if you have the budget, I highly recommend a pressure cooker. I live by my pressure cooker and plant-based on a budget, quick and easy. I tried to do conversions as notes so that if you do have one, you can take your cook time from, we'll say 20 minutes to 3 minutes with your pressure cooker. So that is something that I swear by. It has revolutionized my cooking style. And it also allows me to spend time doing things that I really care about, like going for a walk with my dog, or even doing laundry while dinner is doing its thing. And I'm not going to risk my house catching fire or blowing up or anything like that, because it'll turn off automatically when finished. So
Is
that's
that the difference between a slow cooker and a pressure cooker?
a slow cooker cooks very slowly. So instead of cooking a chili for 3 minutes, you would cook it all day long for 5 hours, 6
But is that what you mean about setting the house on fire? Because people would like make it, then go to school or work and come back and it's just getting finished. And that doesn't sound safe.
I mean, we'll talk about beans, for example. I love beans. I make them all the time. And before I had one, I would put them on the stovetop. And if I'm not monitoring it, sometimes the water would go all the way down and dry out the beans and start smoking. And now, if I have it in my pressure cooker, I don't have to worry about that because it turns off automatically if the water goes down too quickly, or it will cook until the time that I set it and then shut off and not continue cooking beyond that. So say I went to go run a quick errand and it took a little bit longer, I don't have to worry that it's going to catch fire in the way that I would if I were cooking the beans on the stovetop, because no one's there to turn it off manually.
Okay. Is it like the idea then, like an air fryer, which is like super high heat? Is that why it only takes 3 minutes to cook instead of 3 hours or 30 minutes or something? What is it? How does it actually work?
It's super high pressure, and it is magic to me, the way that I can have a meal ready to go so quickly. And there are lots of hacks to make it even quicker with meal prepping and being a little bit thoughtful about your meal plan. But I would say the best thing that has come out of it is that I am more inspired to eat whole pantry staples like lentils and split peas and quinoa, because the cook time is so fast. I can quickly batch cook quinoa in 5 minutes and not worry about it for the week because my pressure cooker took care of it. So that's the number one thing I would invest in. And what's awesome about it is that they've been on the market for a while now, and you're able to find them used on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist. I bought mine used on Amazon, so it was a return that had a dent in it, and I saved $30. But they even have them free on Buy Nothing groups. In my local Buy Nothing group, I've seen maybe 3 or 4 of them. And so if you keep your peepers peeled, you could get a really good deal and not pay the higher ticket price.
That's a good tip. Do you use one of those, Alexandra?
I have I don't know if it's a pressure cooker. It is, because I'm terrified of it. And so I've used it a couple times and I haven't used it again. I'm really, So
did something bad happen to the food that when you tried it?
It's just that it's the pressure thing. It's like undoing it, right, Toni? You have to make sure it doesn't like blow off and hit you in the face. It's like champagne cork.
Are you talking about an electric pressure cooker or one that is it looks like a pot and you put it on your stove?
Electric.
Okay. I hear this all the time. People get them for Christmas and they sit in the box because they seem so intimidating. But once you get to using it just a few times, you are going to be a changed woman. I promise.
Okay. Well, I will take it out of the cupboard where it is, and I will try it. I'll ask Ian for us to find some recipe. We do like.
Which one's better?
Please
take time wise.
I didn't know there was 2. Like there's an electric and then there's one that goes on the stove. I didn't even know that.
Yes, there's the old school one that looks like a pot and it creates high pressure within the pot. The lid is tightly secured onto the pot. And so it builds pressure and you're able to cook in the same way. But I find that to be far more dangerous and intimidating to me than the electric pressure cooker, because it is so smart. It knows when to turn off and when it's going to be dangerous, and it tells you on the screen, like too hot, don't touch, or burning. And so I appreciate that very much. And so that is my preference.
You mentioned like some hacks to overall in terms of, I think I heard in terms of meal prep to make things faster. What are 3 of your top tips overall in terms of the kitchen and cooking to help people eat more healthily and get a meal done more quickly?
Meal planning is number 1 on my list always, because it has changed my life. I used to make impulsive decisions when going to the grocery store, and those really add up. If you go to the grocery store and do not have a plan, you're likely going to buy pasta with no sauce, peanut butter with no jelly, and it's just not going to make sense when you get home. And then you're going to have to supplement those back at the grocery store. And so the way I'm grocery shopping now and thinking about meal planning is not elaborate. It's not a big to do. It's mostly I see what I have on hand. Say I have the pasta. Okay, I'm going to get some cannellini beans and some frozen vegetables and some sauce. And I know that that's a meal I've planned for Monday night. And that's the loose planning that I'm doing. I'm filling in the gaps, creating a grocery shopping list. And then when I go to the store, I'm going to stick to that list and not get distracted by all of the beautiful marketing and cool new vegan products on the market, and just stay disciplined.
So do you and your husband sit down together on Sunday night and decide what you're going to eat for the week, or how does it go for you, this planning?
There are things that I know that we always should have on hand to make quick meals. So I have a bucket of pasta. I have so much pasta on hand that I can throw in a soup to make it heartier or to make different types of pasta dishes. And I keep cans of beans. I keep frozen produce. I keep bricks of tofu, and you can keep those in the freezer. I always have onions and garlic, which last a long time on the counter. Definitely potatoes last a long time, oats for breakfast. And these are things that you can invest in once per month, maybe even go to a grocery store that's a little bit further from your home, but also much cheaper, and get all of your pantry staples. I like to keep my pantry stocked so that when I come home from a business trip and I haven't had time to go to the grocery store, I can still whip something up. And if I didn't do my meal planning as diligently as I usually do, I can easily bring together a meal that is going to be satisfying and healthy-ish.
Those are, I was just thinking through my cabinet as you're saying that. This is so true with the beans, the potatoes, and the pasta. I'm thinking about spices, and when I travel and if you're getting an Airbnb or something, you have a kitchen, I tend to always get garlic, salt, paprika, and cumin. But then I realize that I just have one flavor of dish, that whatever that is a little Mexican, a little Asian, so for somebody who is like, okay, give me the 10 spices that I must have in my kitchen because I need to add to it, because it doesn't really work for Italian night, any of them. Maybe the garlic salt's a little bit, but what are the 8 to 10 spices that everyone has got to have in their kitchen, and then they could make anything?
You've named a few of them. I really like having oregano, dried oregano.
Yeah.
I like having chili powder and cumin and garlic and onion powder, ginger powder, pepper. Does salt count in this or no?
Sure.
Salt. And I'm going to say smoked paprika and cinnamon.
I have cinnamon too. That's next to the coffee maker.
Oh, geez. I didn't throw turmeric. Oh, okay. I'm going to swap out the salt and add in the turmeric.
Okay. Good girl. All the vegan doctors would be proud of you.
I know. Exactly. So,
okay, perfect.
I wanted to also give a tip about spices because it's something that I hear that is a little bit of a concern for people. It can be expensive to go stock up on a whole new spice cabinet. Each jar, depending on where you're shopping, can cost somewhere between $3 and $8. And I recommend, if you are on a tight budget, checking out places like Walmart and Dollar Tree. They do have spice options there. And a lot of the key spices I mentioned can be found at those places. Also, if you are on a tight budget and you wanted to make a pasta sauce or a taco seasoning, you can use the same blends that people use for their meat because they're simply a spice blend. And often those taco seasoning packets, you can find them now with no salt added as well. Those can be 50 cents, sometimes even cheaper. I've seen them for 25 cents. And they have that mix of cumin and chili powder and coriander and the delicious spices that would make up a good taco meat. Like mine, I would use lentils.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want. How long do spices last? Because I've had spices in my cabinet for years and years, and I don't know if the health properties might have waned, but also maybe they've gone like flaxseed, I know goes rancid. It's not a spice, but so do spices go rancid?
They do, and they also lose their potency. So what I recommend doing is, if you can, and if you have the energy, buying whole spices and blending them yourself, sort of in the way that a lot of people do flax seeds, buying them in bulk, buy just as much as you think you're going to use, and then grinding those up. That's how we do ours. It's also cheaper that way. And if you're bringing your own produce bags or reusable bags, it's also more sustainable.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, that's great. So a lot of people will come home and they'll say, I'm just so tired after a long day at work. And so it's just easier for me to lift up the phone and I guess call DoorDash and order or stop at McDonald's on the way home. What do you say to those folks? I'm sure you have a lot of empathy for them. How do you convince them to just take that one extra step and start cooking at home?
That's the importance of meal planning. And I used to be in a very similar position. I had a 1.5 hour commute each way. And if I didn't have a plan in place, it's so easy to stop at Chipotle and get a $7 veggie burrito. And that adds up. It's not sustainable for me. And it's also not what I want to be eating on a daily basis. And you make those decisions over and over again, and you don't even realize how much it costs until you're doing a line by line of your bank account or credit card statements. And for those people, yes, I do feel for you, but if you can just spend 5 minutes putting that plan together and thinking, I have a can of vegetarian refried beans, I have tortillas, I have some salsa in a jar, I meal prepped some quinoa for 5 minutes in the pressure cooker. All right, I have everything I need to throw together a burrito as soon as I get home. It's going to come together in 5 minutes. If you didn't meal prep your quinoa, you can still use all of those same things. Add in a spoonful of can of corn. You could really use so much of what can be stored in your refrigerator and pantry already.
Or 90-second rice.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And there are, you can either freeze your own rice or quinoa. So if you are making it, but you can also go to Trader Joe's and buy rice that's frozen if you can't be bothered.
That's great. That actually ends up being less time, if we really think about it, than finding a parking space and going into Chipotle, or even sitting sometimes in line outside a fast food place in your car. So thank you. That's great.
There's always lines at Chipotle, so depends on the time you go. But
yeah.
I have a quick question about frozen vegetables. As you mentioned them earlier, and I kind of always forget that. It's like I need to get the fresh ones, and but I do use frozen, like little frozen broccoli and frozen peas for the food I make my dog. Are there a set of vegetables that you think are almost just as fabulous taste-wise, frozen, and then others that you're like, maybe don't, because there's so many different vegetables, and we've definitely learned from the different doctors on the show. There's nutrient density in canned and frozen and fresh. It's different, but it's still there. So which ones do you like frozen taste-wise?
Frozen, I like broccoli. I tend to throw broccoli in things when it's frozen instead of eating it just on its own. And so I would buy frozen broccoli. I like to buy bell pepper medleys, where you have a lot of different colors of bell peppers, and sometimes there are onions in there as well. And peas, I usually have peas on hand, and stir fry blends, because those are great for any type of stir fry, whether it's quinoa or brown rice or noodles that you can whip together quickly throughout the work week. If I have my preference, and if I have more time, I do prefer always using my own onion and garlic, because I just love that smell. I love freshly chopped onions, and so I like to have them fresh. But if it's a barrier between not eating the produce at home and going to Chipotle, then I highly recommend having a well-stocked freezer, so that you can not have to worry about the washing and the chopping, and just simply toss it in there as is.
And for onions, I used to just get whatever onion, but now it seems to me that like a sweet onion to chop with garlic to make stir fries and stuff like that, and then like red onion, I like it like raw on top of a bagel or something. And when I stir fry, it's a very different flavor than a sweet onion or yellow onion. So what onions for stir frying, and which ones for raw?
I usually am always looking for what the best deal is. My husband believes that there are more health properties in red onions, and so he tends to go for ingredients that are going to be the best nutritional bang for his buck. And for me, I'm looking to save my buck, and just find the best deals. And in my recipes, I try to make them incredibly versatile. And so often it says bell pepper, your choice, onion, your choice, because I want people to have the flexibility to use what they have on hand. And I want to give people the permission to play with their food and use what they have. And I know that for me, when I was learning how to cook and didn't have the experience of what goes well together and what you can swap in and out, I sometimes made mistakes and had to scrap the dish because I made the mistake. So in my
Good to know.
in my books, I leave a very small ingredient list with a lot of swap-ins. I put in, okay, you don't have this works well. You can also add this in step 4 if you want to enhance the flavors and textures. And I also add in recipe testers tips And I will leave a space for people to write in their own notes. So I leave blank lines so that if you, Dotsie, hate bell peppers, but you like jalapenos, you can say, I swapped in the jalapenos for the bell peppers and it worked great. And remember that so that when you cook it again next time, it can be made the same.
It's great that you talk about frozen. Dotsie, thanks for asking that question, because I've always had a sort of a bias against frozen foods, like they're not as healthy. But doctors on this show have told us that often, because our organic vegetables come from far away, that the flash frozen organic, or if you can't afford organic, the flash frozen vegetables have sometimes more nutrients in them because they haven't traveled so far to you before getting frozen.
And they're picked at their prime season. So they are often freshly preserved in their best state.
Great. We talked about dinner. Dotsie asked about dinner. So let's talk about breakfast. That's a time when people often, especially if they have kids or they want to get a lot of things in a workout in before they get to work, they often will short shrift themselves on breakfast because they feel like they don't have time. Tell us about some of the breakfasts in your book and what your general philosophy is on how to make breakfast healthier, but easy.
There are a lot of ways that you can plan in advance for busy work weeks. And some of the more popular options include overnight oats. And in my cookbook, I have 5 options, my favorite being the peanut butter and jelly overnight oats.
Mhm.
You can also do freezer packs for smoothies. And the way that happens is you can take a mason jar or a silicone bag or any Tupperware and fill it with the contents of your smoothie, except the wet. So if you're putting in your protein powder and your frozen vegetables and even some fresh kale, toss your 5 days worth of individually packed smoothie contents into your freezer. And then in the morning, all you need to do is take each individual pack out, toss it into the blender with your plant-based milk and blend it up. And you don't have to do that extra 5 minutes of work in the morning. So I have some options for those. And then what I realized is a lot of people, when they think of freezer-friendly meals, they think of soups, lasagna, and things like that. But you can freeze anything. In my book, I was literally every recipe, I would be like, can this go in the freezer? And sometimes it didn't work, but very rarely. And I found that you can freeze your breakfast burritos. So if you're doing some tofu scramble breakfast burritos, you can wrap them up tightly in tin foil, stack them in your freezer, and as needed, pull them out, thaw them out. You can put them in a toaster oven, and it's going to be just as delicious. So there are a lot of options that are heartier, savory breakfasts as well that can be made in advance, frozen, and then thawed out during the work week.
Can pancakes be frozen?
Absolutely. Pancakes, waffles, muffins, you name it.
In their cooked state or just their uncooked state?
In their cooked state. So you'll bake them, you'll bake your muffins, you'll cook your pancakes, you'll do your waffle maker, and then you will freeze them individually. The way I like to do it is that I freeze them for a short period of time during the day, and then I individually wrap things so that so I pull them out of the freezer, then I individually wrap them so that it's easier for me to transport if I'm leaving the house, or if you're going to work in the morning and you have a toaster at work, you can simply pop that in at work.
And what is wrapping them in something? Is plastic not good and paper is better, wax paper? What do you use? Because I find sometimes when I freeze something, it comes out, the consistency is a little different. It seems to be the moisture. There's a moisture issue.
There are a few ways you can go about it. I know that some people are now moving away from aluminum foil, but you can first layer it with parchment paper. and then wrap it in aluminum. And then the way that I usually store, we'll say muffins, is something like that, and then put it in a big container, like recipes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Excellent. Do you have a favorite smoothie or a green shake recipe that you can share with us, the ingredients?
It's the simplest recipe of all time. It's not even a recipe, but I like about 1 cup of spinach or kale, 2 large frozen bananas, and about a cup or a cup and a half of plant milk. And it can be depending on how thick you like your smoothie. Super simple. That's it. It tastes like a milkshake.
Wow.
You can even toss in some flax meal because that doesn't have a strong taste. And it is so good. I've given it to children saying, this is a green milkshake. And they loved it. It tastes like vanilla ice cream. And it's fantastic.
Yes,
Vanilla ice cream. You sold me on vanilla ice cream.
I was going to say that with you. That's where it is. I was curious earlier, you were saying that a lot of the people who watch you and listen to you are meat eaters, and they're just kind of, they're curious, and they maybe want to do a meatless Monday or just kind of lean in. And many of us who are, vegan share food ideas with people who are like, oh, I think I want to try it. I want to ride my bike faster. And I go, okay, here's some ideas. But I always get this look like, what the hell is she saying? Because I'll take them through like bowls. I'll go, layer quinoa and then some kale and some spinach and then black beans and lentil beans and tahini and hemp seeds. And I just, and they're like, first of all, I think they're thinking, well, that sounds gross because, our taste buds are a wee bit different, right? Than the day after we stopped eating meat. I know mine definitely changed dramatically. So help us out on what you tell those folks. Like, what are their 3 favorite foods that you're, meal with combinations of food, I guess, that you tell them and they are like, oh, that was so good. So that we can better help people, because I'm not doing a very good job.
Dotsie, all of the ingredients that you said, don't say those ingredients anymore.
They've probably never even eaten any of them.
Yeah, don't say those anymore. But
I already know it's not working.
What I like to say is that you don't have to eat differently or dramatically differently than you eat already. Think about the favorite foods that you enjoy. You enjoy pizza. You enjoy burritos. You have pasta dishes. You can make those with simple swaps and still enjoy the same familiar textures and flavors that you're used to and that your family's used to. And it's often dramatic. And I know that it was for me. I had never had kale. I had never had quinoa. I had never even had brown rice before. And so to think, well, geez, now I can't eat the food that I love. And now I have to eat these things I've never eaten in my life. It seems too overwhelming for people. And so to suggest what they're comfortable eating already with simple swaps. I mentioned earlier, for my family, they love beef tacos, and I make lentil tacos using the same taco seasoning, using the same toppings of diced onion, diced cilantro, diced tomato in the same taco shells. And they know that it's not a foreign meal to them. And so when I feed it to them, they're not really thinking, because it tastes the same and it looks the same and it's very familiar, that it doesn't have the beef that they're used to. They're just thinking, oh, this just tastes like delicious tacos that I know and love. And so that's the direction I try to move people into, because it sets them up for more long-term success.
That's my favorite tip of the whole show. Like, I'm on it, sister. I now know what I'm going to say. I will not suggest the Laird Bowl ever again. It never goes anywhere. Okay.
Tell us about lunches, especially for people who go to work. What do you bring? What do you suggest? 3 things in your cookbook that might be able to be brought to work that are easy, filling, and can last through, from 7 a.m. to noon or 1.
Always leftovers. We do bigger batches because it's going to save us the time and our labor of having to create a separate dish specifically for lunch. So I usually make a bigger batch. And if you are not someone who likes to eat the same thing every day, it's really cool because you can switch things up. I like to make a black bean chili, for example. And on the first day, we'll eat it as standalone chili. But then the next day, when I serve it for lunch here and my husband takes it to work, I'll serve it over roasted sweet potatoes. And you can even throw those sweet potatoes in the microwave if that's faster for you. And it changes the flavors. You can even put on some fresh cilantro or some diced onion. The next day you eat it, you can make more of a casserole by taking a little bit of it and adding in a layer of, or baking on a layer of cornbread and making it a casserole instead of a bowl. Or you can serve it with quinoa or brown rice mixed in. So it's a little bit it's even more heartier, and add in some fresh tomatoes. So you can switch it up and take your base and create new eating experiences. So that's how I like to do things. But if you really don't like leftovers, and I know a lot of people don't, I like easy salads. There's this bean salad from the first Plant-Based on a Budget cookbook that is mixed cans of beans, diced onion, diced bell pepper, diced tomatoes, a can of corn, squeeze of lemon juice. If you have it in your budget, you can throw in some avocado, diced avocado, and some salt, maybe some red pepper flakes if you have some on hand, and cilantro, minced cilantro. And it is so delicious. It's hearty, protein packed, fresh, good for your gut, and also very extremely Instagram worthy.
That sounds so good. And red pepper flakes, I think you need to take something out of the spice and put red pepper flakes in.
Oh yeah.
Because those are
That's
just
true.
like
That's so true.
We touched on this in our last episode together, episode 105, when you were on with your partner, Michelle, your business partner, in your first cookbook, right? But she's not involved with this cookbook.
Correct.
Right. So you had a documentary called 7 Days Fast Food to Vegan, and you profiled a young man named Raul who ate 12 fast food dinners a week, and he just wasn't feeling good, and he was quite a bit overweight, and he had amazing transformation in 7 days of following a vegan diet with your help and Michelle's help. His LDL went from 110 to 59 in 7 days. I mean, it was, even Dr. Michael Greger was amazed. But can you tell us, do you know how he's doing now? Because so many people, do fall off the wagon when they don't have the overseeing of, you and Michelle.
He has moved toward eating a healthier diet, and I am really proud of him. He has stayed true to his fitness and wellness, and I follow him on social media, and he just looks to be living his best life. And what's so cool about it is that he lives in a rural community outside of Sacramento in a farmland. And when we met him, he had never heard of Trader Joe's. He had never heard of Whole Foods. These are grocery stores that were not on his radar at all. And he was shopping at places that were big conventional grocery stores. And it's so awesome that you can have those results and even partway stick to the lifestyle that we prescribed. We were feeding him no oil, no salt, no sugar, whole food, plant-based. And so even though he did not stick to that, he still is much better off and learned the resources and the support and the things to snack on. And if it just makes me feel like if we taught these things earlier on, how much better off people would be moving forward after, even if we taught it in high school or in junior high school, people would not suffer nearly as much.
Yeah. Oh, great. Excellent.
That's a great update. Yeah.
Where can people see that documentary, that short documentary? I think it's 12 minutes or something, but it's just really inspirational. His mom is inspired. At first, he doesn't tell his family, but then when he tells his mother, and she's so excited, she starts eating plant-based with him.
That's exactly right. He was really shy and scared, and you can see it, while he's documenting it, people are giving him a hard time. You can see his coworker is making fun of him, and so I understand why he didn't want to tell his family. But then when he told his mom, she was like, "I'm doing this with you," and she also just looks like she's radiating right now, bright lights from her face. She's glowing. She looks so healthy, and I'm happy for both of them.
And so where can that be found?
7daysdoc.com.
Great. I recommend everybody go there for some inspiration. If you're worried that, it's going to take too long for me to feel the difference. No, it can happen within 7. It happened actually the next morning when he first woke up, he felt a difference. So there you go.
We've also tried it. Well, I also tried it again. A family member who I won't put on blast. I won't say who it is, but a family member made one of those jokes. I'm sure we've all heard it. Well, if I could eat like this every day, I would do it. And I said, challenge accepted. I showed up with a week's worth of meal prepped food. I had jars of overnight oats and smoothie packs and all of the works. And he also lost 7 pounds in a week. He felt great. He was so proud of himself for sticking to eating healthy because it was more accessible and easy for him to maintain. And I felt proud of him too.
Well, folks, if you want to do your own experiment, you should just get the book. And you can try it on yourself, right, Toni?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I mentioned, it's for everybody. So if you are today eating drive-through and you're wanting to make a change, you can use this book. If you've never cooked anything, you can use this book. If you eat whole foods plant-based, there are lots of swaps I put in. If you don't eat salt, if you don't eat oil, these are ways to modify. And so I really strongly feel like it can benefit everybody.
Thank you so much. This was a blast. You're so great. You're so fun to interview.
Thank you.
I'm like inspired to go do something with the kitchen right now. So I'm going to go do that.
Well, back at you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Hey, folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switch4good.org. That's podcast@switch4good.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to Switch for Good. This is the future.